There is a divine order moving through every life, an invisible law that never fails to respond to clarity, courage, and self-respect. When we interfere with that law by trying to rescue those who refuse alignment, we delay our own good. Many sincere souls exhaust their strength attempting to save others, believing sacrifice is love. But true love is obedience to truth, and truth never asks you to abandon yourself. Life is not a battlefield where you must bleed to prove your worth. It is a school of awakening, and every soul must learn its own lesson. There are people you may bless, release, and move on from, without guilt, fear, or apology. Today, let us speak clearly about 6 kinds of people you must never try to save. First, never save the person who enjoys being a victim. This person feeds on sympathy as though it were nourishment. No solution satisfies them, no opportunity is ever enough, and every open door becomes another story of injustice. The more you help, the weaker they become, because they are invested in their suffering. When you try to rescue them, you unknowingly support their bondage. The law of life says that freedom begins when responsibility is accepted. You cannot lift someone who refuses to stand. Withdraw your rescue, and you restore the divine pressure that awakens strength. Second, never save the person who refuses self-honesty. This is the individual who explains, blames, justifies, and deflects, but never looks inward. They want relief without revelation, reward without correction. Truth frightens them because truth dissolves illusion. You may offer wisdom, but it slides off like water on glass. The universe teaches through awareness, not persuasion. When someone refuses to see themselves, no amount of love can replace their missing honesty. Step aside and let life become their teacher. Third, never save the person who disrespects your boundaries. This person takes your time, energy, kindness, and patience as though they are entitled to them. They call it closeness, loyalty, or need, but the feeling you experience is depletion. The soul thrives on balance. When someone repeatedly violates your limits, they are not asking for help, they are demanding control. Divine love never invades, never drains, never humiliates. The moment you protect your boundaries, you align with self-respect, and self-respect summons miracles. Fourth, never save the person addicted to chaos. Some people are uncomfortable with peace. When calm arrives, they provoke drama. When order appears, they create disorder. They confuse intensity with aliveness and conflict with purpose. You will notice that just as things improve, they sabotage progress. Trying to save such a person pulls you into their storm and convinces you that turbulence is normal. It is not. Harmony is your natural state. Release the chaos lover and watch how swiftly peace recognizes you. Fifth, never save the person who mocks growth and ridicules faith, vision, or hope. This person laughs at discipline, calls commitment foolish, and labels spiritual aspiration as naive. They fear expansion because it exposes their stagnation. They discourage not because they know better, but because they dare not rise. When you allow such voices near your heart, your inner guidance becomes faint. The law of attraction responds to agreement. Choose to agree with possibility, not with cynicism. Protect your vision, for it is sacred. Sixth, never save the person who refuses to save themselves. This is the hardest truth. Because compassion often disguises itself as obligation. But there is a difference between support and substitution. You may open the door, but they must walk through it. You may light the path, but they must take the steps. When someone consistently avoids effort while expecting rescue, they are asking you to interrupt their destiny. The universe does not advance through force, it advances through willingness. Release them to their own awakening. Understand this deeply. Letting go is not abandonment, it is alignment. When you stop trying to save the wrong people, you conserve energy for the right assignments. Life is precise. It does not waste love, strength, or wisdom. Everything you give returns multiplied when it is given in harmony with divine law. You are not here to be drained, diminished, or delayed. You are here to express wholeness, clarity, and power. The moment you stop rescuing what refuses to rise, your own life accelerates. Opportunities appear. Peace settles, strength renews itself. Affirm quietly within yourself, I release all souls to their perfect path. I honor my own life, my own calling, my own good. I trust the divine order to do what I never could. When you live by this understanding, you do not harden your heart, you purify it. You no longer confuse love with sacrifice or kindness with self-betrayal. You become a clear channel, and through you, life moves effortlessly, abundantly, and justly. You cannot rescue someone who is committed to their own suffering, because suffering can become an identity as powerful as any ambition or dream. There are people who do not merely experience pain but live inside it, decorate it, defend it, and introduce themselves through it. Their wounds become stories they tell repeatedly, not to be healed but to be validated. They do not seek transformation, they seek witnesses. In such a state, suffering is no longer an accident of life, but a chosen posture of the mind, and no external effort can dissolve what is internally protected. When a person is committed to their suffering, they unconsciously resist every solution. Advice sounds like criticism, opportunity feels like pressure, and hope appears as an insult. They listen only to respond, never to receive. Even when help arrives, they reinterpret it through the lens of their pain, turning assistance into evidence that life is unfair or that people are disappointing. Their suffering becomes a shield, because as long as they are wounded, they are never required to change, grow, or take responsibility. Pain becomes a safe place where expectations are low and sympathy is guaranteed. Trying to rescue such a person creates a strange reversal of roles. The helper becomes exhausted, anxious, and confused, while the one being helped remains unchanged. Over time, the rescuer begins to feel guilty for wanting distance, selfish for wanting peace, and cruel for imagining a life not centered around someone else's pain. This is how commitment to suffering spreads. It does not remain contained in one soul, it seeks company. If you are not careful, you begin carrying a burden that was never assigned to you by life itself. The universal law of balance is clear. Energy flows where there is receptivity. When someone refuses to receive responsibility, awareness, or effort, your energy has nowhere to land. It circulates endlessly, producing fatigue instead of results. Love, in its highest form, requires openness on both sides. Without willingness, love becomes labor, and labor without purpose slowly erodes joy. You may notice that no matter how much you give, the situation never stabilizes. There is always another crisis, another complaint, another reason why now is not the time for change. A person committed to suffering often mistakes rescue for love. They believe that being saved proves their worth, while saving themselves would expose their fear of failure. If they try and fall, they must face themselves. If you try and fail, they can blame you. This unconscious strategy keeps them protected from self-examination. As long as someone else is attempting the rescue, they remain passive observers of their own life. This is why constant helping can unintentionally strengthen helplessness. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension to this dynamic. Every soul is guided by an inner law that presses it toward growth. When growth is avoided, discomfort increases. That discomfort is not punishment, it is guidance. When you step in too quickly to relieve it, you interfere with the very mechanism designed to awaken them. What feels like compassion may actually delay their evolution. Life speaks clearly, but only to those who listen. When you silence life's voice by rescuing someone repeatedly, you position yourself against a force far greater than personal intention. This does not mean withholding kindness or becoming indifferent. It means recognizing the difference between support and substitution. Support encourages strength. Substitution replaces it. The moment your help removes consequences, it removes motivation. The moment your presence excuses stagnation, it reinforces it. True compassion respects the intelligence of the soul and trusts that each person is capable of answering their own call when ready. There is often fear beneath the urge to rescue. Fear of being seen as unloving, fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of being needed less. Sometimes rescuing gives a sense of purpose, an identity as the strong one, the fixer, the dependable one. But any identity built on someone else's weakness is unstable. When their suffering ends, your role disappears, and if your sense of worth is attached to that role, you may unconsciously prefer that they never heal. Letting go of the need to rescue is an act of inner honesty. It requires you to face your own bow. Undaries and acknowledge where your responsibility ends. It asks you to trust that life is not cruel, that lessons are not random, and that strength emerges through engagement, not avoidance. When you step back, you may feel discomfort at first, because silence replaces urgency and space replaces intensity. But in that space, clarity begins to return. You may notice that when you stop intervening, the other person reacts strongly. They may accuse you of changing, becoming cold, or abandoning them. This reaction is not evidence of your wrongdoing, it is evidence that the pattern has been disrupted. Patterns resist interruption. Suffering resists release. If someone depended on your rescue to avoid themselves, your withdrawal feels threatening. Yet this is often the first moment when true choice becomes available to them. Some will rise when the rescue ends. Others will seek a new rescuer. This outcome is not yours to manage. Your task is alignment, not control. When you remain aligned with truth, your energy stabilizes, your intuition sharpens, and your life regains momentum. You begin to attract relationships rooted in mutual growth rather than imbalance. Peace returns not because problems vanish, but because you are no longer fighting battles that were never yours. There is wisdom in understanding that suffering, when faced honestly, can be a doorway. Many people awaken only after realizing that no one is coming to save them. In that realization, something dormant stirs. Strength that was ignored becomes accessible. Responsibility transforms from burden into power. By refusing to rescue someone committed to their suffering, you may be offering them the greatest gift available, the chance to meet themselves without distraction. Your life is guided by a higher order that values harmony, expansion, and clarity. When you repeatedly entangle yourself with suffering that refuses resolution, you step out of that order. Your own growth slows, your vision dims, and your joy becomes conditional. The universe does not reward self-neglect disguised as virtue. It responds to alignment, not exhaustion. Choosing not to rescue is choosing trust. Trust that life knows what it is doing. Trust that strength is born from engagement. Trust that love does not require self-erasure. When you hold this understanding, your heart remains open, but your hands are no longer chained. You can care without carrying, love without losing yourself, and witness pain without becoming responsible for it. In this state, you stand quietly in your own authority, no longer pulled by guilt or urgency, allowing each soul to answer its own call, honoring the sacred boundary between compassion and interference. Recognizing that suffering ends not when someone is saved, but when someone decides to rise. Saving others at the cost of self-respect blocks your own divine flow, because self-respect is the foundation upon which all harmony, abundance, and clarity are built. When self-respect is compromised, life begins to resist you. Opportunities hesitate, peace withdraws, and effort multiplies without reward. This is not punishment, it is alignment correcting itself. The inner law responds instantly when you step out of integrity with your own worth. Many people confuse self-sacrifice with virtue. They believe that giving until it hurts is noble, that enduring disrespect proves love, that silence in the face of violation is maturity. But the soul does not thrive on martyrdom, it thrives on balance. When you repeatedly place another person's comfort above your own dignity, you send a silent message to life that your needs are optional. Life listens carefully to such messages and responds accordingly. Self-respect is not arrogance or coldness. It is an inner agreement that our time, energy, emotions, and presence are valuable. The moment you allow someone to drain you, dismiss you, or cross your boundaries without consequence, you fracture that agreement. Each fracture weakens your inner authority. Over time, you may notice that your voice softens, your intuition becomes uncertain, and your decisions feel heavy. This is the divine flow slowing down, waiting for you to realign. When you save others at the expense of self-respect, you teach them how to treat you. You demonstrate that your limits are flexible, your standards negotiable, and your well-being secondary. People do not rise to meet what you deserve, they respond to what you permit. This is not a judgment on others, but a reminder of the power of example. Respect is contagious when it is embodied, not when it is requested. There is a subtle fear beneath the loss of self-respect, fear of being rejected, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. To avoid these fears, you may tolerate situations that quietly diminish you. You may stay longer than you should, give more than you can afford, and explain away behavior that wounds you. But fear cannot be soothed by self-betrayal. It only grows stronger because it learns that your peace is negotiable. The divine flow moves effortlessly when your inner and outer actions agree. When you say yes outwardly while screaming no inwardly, that flow becomes obstructed. Energy leaks through contradiction. You may feel tired without reason, busy without progress, helpful without fulfillment. This is the cost of misalignment. The universe supports clarity, not confusion. It amplifies coherence, not compromise. Saving others while abandoning self-respect also distorts the meaning of love. Love becomes duty. Care becomes obligation. Kindness becomes resentment in disguise. Over time, the heart hardens, not because it lacks compassion, but because it has been overdrawn. What begins as generosity ends as bitterness, and bitterness poisons both giver and receiver. Love that costs self-respect is not sustainable. It collapses under its own weight. Self-respect creates a natural boundary that filters who can access your life. When that boundary is strong, only those capable of mutual respect can remain close. When it is weak, anyone with need, entitlement, or chaos can enter. This is why restoring self-respect often results in fewer relationships but deeper peace. Quantity decreases as quality improves. The soul recognizes relief before the mind understands why. There is also a spiritual consequence to abandoning self-respect. You disconnect from inner guidance. Intuition speaks softly and requires trust. When you repeatedly override your own knowing to please or rescue others, intuition retreats. You begin seeking validation externally because you have stopped honoring it internally. Guidance does not disappear, it waits. It waits for you to prove that you will listen. The divine flow is intelligent and responsive. It opens doors when you value yourself enough to walk through them. It provides support when you stop supporting what drains you. It rearranges circumstances when you choose dignity over approval. Many people pray for change while continuing behaviors that block it. They ask for peace while tolerating disrespect. They ask for abundance while giving from depletion. Life responds not to words, but to alignment. Choosing self-respect does not make you unkind. It makes you clear. Clarity prevents resentment. Boundaries prevent burnout. Saying no when necessary preserves the sincerity of your yes. When you respect yourself, your giving becomes clean, not compulsive. You help from fullness, not from fear. This kind of giving strengthens both parties rather than weakening one to sustain the other. When you stop saving others at your own expense, you may initially feel uncomfortable. Old patterns resist change. People accustomed to unlimited access may protest. They may accuse you of becoming distant or selfish. But what they are reacting to is not cruelty, it is correction. Balance feels threatening to those who benefited from imbalance. This discomfort is temporary. Peace is permanent. As self-respect returns, the divine flow resumes. You notice that decisions become easier, your body relaxes, opportunities align without force, you attract people who meet you where you stand rather than where you collapse. Life no longer feels like resistance, it feels like response. You are no longer swimming against an unseen current, you are moving with it. The soul was never designed to be a sacrifice altar, it was designed to be a channel. When you honor yourself, that channel clears. Energy moves freely, creativity returns. Joy feels natural rather than earned. You realize that protecting your dignity was never selfish, it was necessary. The universe cannot support a life you do not respect because support follows value. In honoring self-respect, you silently declare that your life matters, your presence matters, your peace matters. This declaration does not need to be announced or defended. It is felt. Life responds immediately, rearranging relationships, circumstances, and inner states to match this truth. When you no longer save others by abandoning yourself, you step back into harmony, allowing the divine flow to move unobstructed, steady, intelligent, and exact. Releasing the unwilling allows both souls to realign with truth because truth cannot be forced, persuaded, or negotiated. It responds only to readiness. When one person is willing and the other is resistant, imbalance is created, and imbalance always produces strain. Effort flows in one direction. Responsibility in another. and peace is the first thing to disappear. Truth requires consent. Without it, even the purest intention becomes interference. There are people who ask for help but reject change. They want relief without transformation, comfort without accountability, and support without effort. Their words sound sincere, but their actions remain unchanged. This creates confusion for the helper, who believes persistence will eventually awaken them. Yet awakening is not triggered by pressure, it is activated by inner agreement. Until that agreement exists, no external force can substitute for it. When you continue to invest energy in someone who is unwilling, you unknowingly take on a role that does not belong to you. You become the motivator, the conscience, the reminder, the stabilizer. This role is unsustainable because it requires constant output without replenishment. Over time, you may feel responsible for their choices, outcomes, and emotions. This is not love, it is displacement of responsibility. Every soul has its own assignment, and carrying another's delays your own. The unwilling often appear dependent, but dependence is not the same as openness. Openness invites guidance. Dependence resists growth. A dependent person unconsciously benefits from staying where they are because someone else is compensating for their lack of action. When you remove that compensation, discomfort arises. That discomfort is not cruelty, it is clarity. It reveals what has been avoided. Releasing does not mean rejection. It means acknowledging what is real. It means seeing clearly instead of hoping blindly. Hope without honesty becomes denial. Denial drains energy because it requires constant justification. You explain behavior that hurts you, excuse patterns that repeat, and ignore signals that your presence is not being honored. Truth, once recognized, simplifies everything. It may be painful, but it is never confusing. When you release the unwilling, you return power to its rightful place. They regain responsibility for their life, and you regain authority over yours. This rebalancing often feels unsettling at first. Familiar patterns dissolve, and silence replaces urgency. You may question whether you did enough, said enough, waited long enough. These questions arise from habit, not wisdom. Wisdom recognizes when effort no longer serves growth. The universe operates through precision. It matches people by frequency, not by intention. When two individuals are misaligned in willingness, separation is a natural correction. Forcing connection under these conditions creates friction, not unity. Friction consumes energy without producing progress. Release removes resistance, allowing each person to move toward what matches their current state of consciousness. There is a common fear that releasing someone will harm them. This fear assumes that they cannot survive without your involvement. It underestimates their strength and overestimates your role. Life is far more capable than any individual. It designs experiences to awaken awareness. When you step aside, life steps in. Lessons become clearer when they are no longer softened by rescue. Releasing the unwilling also reveals hidden attachments within yourself. You may discover that your identity was tied to being needed, helpful, or indispensable. Letting go challenges this identity and invites a deeper understanding of self-worth. Worth that depends on being useful is fragile. Worth that arises from being aligned is stable. This transition is uncomfortable but liberating. Truth does not argue, it simply is. When someone is unwilling, their resistance communicates clearly, even if their words do not. Listening to actions rather than promises restores clarity. You stop negotiating wit, potential, and begin responding to reality. Reality is not cruel, it is efficient. It shows you where energy belongs and where it does not. As you release, emotional space opens. In that space, intuition becomes audible again. You begin to sense what aligns and what drains. You notice how much effort certain relationships required and how little return they offered. This awareness is not bitterness, it is discernment. Discernment protects peace without closing the heart. For the unwilling, release can be the catalyst they needed. When external support disappears, internal resources are activated. Some will rise, others will choose a different path. Either outcome restores truth. Growth cannot occur in environments where avoidance is enabled. By stepping back, you remove the cushion that prevented impact. Impact, when honest, awakens awareness. For you, release restores momentum. Energy once trapped in cycles of explanation and effort becomes available for creativity, growth, and connection. You begin to attract relationships where willingness meets willingness, where effort is mutual, and where truth is shared rather than enforced. These connections feel lighter because they are not maintained by struggle. Realignment with truth is not dramatic. It is quiet. It feels like relief rather than excitement. You stop rehearsing conversations in your mind. You stop justifying your choices. You stop waiting for someone to change so your life can begin. In this stillness, clarity settles naturally. Releasing the unwilling is an act of trust. Trust in life's intelligence. Trust in the timing of awakening. Trust that alignment matters more than attachment. When you honor truth, even when it separates, harmony follows. Not immediately, but inevitably. Each soul moves back onto its own path, no longer entangled in resistance, no longer slowed by misalignment, allowing truth to resume its steady, uncompromised flow through both lives.